Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to It's Worth a Shot. Today we are going to be talking about implementing enhanced barrier precautions. So just as a reminder, this presentation may contain information and/or content supplied by third parties. The information provided does not constitute endorsement or recommendation by Mountain Pacific. We had a couple of updates and reminders. World Immunization Week is next week, so April 24th to the 30th. So we hope that you guys use this time to do some fun campaigns for immunizations. We also wanted to make you guys aware of the 7th annual Older Adult Mental Health Awareness Day Symposium. So we will have the link in the slide deck for you guys. And then we wanted to remind everyone of the MDS training coming up on April 30th. We are pleased to have Jennifer LeBay present for us again. So it should be a wonderful presentation. She's going to talk about error messages and how to address them. So it should be a good one. And then off to the side here, you guys can see the Center of Excellence. They have a plethora of training going on this month. So make sure you guys get registered for that. They are doing a cohort training. So make sure you guys take a look at that. Again, all of the links will be in the slide deck. And then those are usually posted. If you guys aren't sure, you can find our It's Worth a Shot slide deck on our website. And all of the links are in there. And so just some housekeeping items. As always, we appreciate you guys' feedback and ideas for upcoming topics. So make sure you guys drop those in the chat or just touch base with your Mountain Pacific account manager and let them know what topics you guys would like to see. And then at the end, we'll have an evaluation and we review those and appreciate your feedback as well. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick polling question. All right. How confident do you feel with implementing enhanced barrier precautions? Ooh, I'm liking the confidence. Give you guys another second. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll. About 58% of you guys feel pretty confident. Well, hopefully after today, you guys will feel much more confident. Okay, so just a quick recap of our weekly influenza snapshot. I'm happy to see that Wyoming is finally in the green, getting out of that yellow. We're working down on the scale there. So all of the states in our region are on the spectrum of green. Overall, nationwide, there's a downward trend. So it's where we like to see it. So we'll hopefully keep seeing that. And then for COVID, you can see that overall the positivity, the ED department visits, hospitalizations, and deaths are all declining. So it's good to see that. Some of our regions, areas in Montana, Alaska, Wyoming, they have some stable areas, but other than that, we're in the green and doing good. So, and then I am going to turn the time over to Kelly O'Leary. She is going to be talking to us about enhanced barrier precautions. I'd like to welcome Kelly.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. So yeah, more about enhanced barrier precautions, everybody's favorite topic right now. I suppose it's good all of our respiratory viruses are going down, so we could focus on implementing enhanced barrier precautions. Go ahead, next slide. So it was very timely Denise from Holly Makua in Hawaii was doing an enhanced barrier precautions presentation. And then we start seeing in the chat that CMS came out with this memo that same day. So that was very timely as well. And then we've just been getting a plethora of questions. So we're hoping to guide to some resources. I'm glad to see over half of you guys are confident. And so it'd be great to be able to have you put in how you've implemented your ideas into the chat for others to see as we go through some Q&As. I think it's interesting they only gave folks 11 days to implement. So those folks that waited until this was mandatory, I feel for you. And hopefully you've been able to pull it together pretty quickly. So here to help. Next slide. This is the sign everybody's most familiar with, is this orange sign that has enhanced barrier precautions. And there's a couple large studies around the recommendations, and it's that if we were to do any point prevalence study, so go around and test everybody's noses in your facility or groins or axilla, probably half of your residents would be colonized with some MDRO. So there's this, unbeknownst spread possibly happening without us knowing it, just because we're not testing for it, and folks are just becoming colonized, not necessarily infected. So that's the why behind enhanced barrier precautions. They came out with this initially in 2019, updated it in 2022. And now it's mandatory. And it is I look at it as in between standard precautions and contact precautions. And standard precautions is, at the discretion of the staff to put on the appropriate PPE based on these tasks that they're doing. And then contact precautions was looked at as a little bit too restrictive in a home-like environment like long-term care facilities. So enhanced barrier precautions is meant to be kind of that in between. So it's a risk-based approach on wearing PPE for certain activities when somebody has a wound or an indwelling medical device or a history or known multi-drug resistant organism. I just want to point out on this sign, it's pretty clear. We've been getting a lot of questions about, I'm just going in to give meds with for a G tube or a feeding tube, or, you're using the device. So right on this list, it says device care or use, and any of those listed, you want to don PPE. And I don't know if you guys are using your APIC resources, but there's been some chatter on APIC too. And so I thought somebody put it well to think about high contact and when to put that glove and gown. So if your staff's clothes will contact the resident's clothes, or linens. So just keep that in mind as we kind of go forward. Okay, next slide. I call this bringing out your inner cheerleader because, it's really that enhanced barrier precautions should be better for the resident, better for staff. Contact precautions is very restrictive. And, you cross the threshold, you're putting on your PPE, patients got to stay in their room, and you have it's meant to be time limited. Enhanced barrier precautions, gown and glove, only certain activities, and resident can come out of their room and you can, have them be in a room with another resident too. You just need to make sure you're having that infection prevention in between. And this is meant to be for the duration of the patient's stay or until that resolution of the wound or they don't have an indwelling medical device anymore. So it really is better than contact precautions if I could, try to rally behind enhanced barrier precautions. Go ahead, next slide. And for sure, you want to, this is CDC's list. And so you want to make sure that you do have these approaches already in place. And maybe this is when some folks can put in ideas for implementation for those that are not as confident. And if I was a surveyor, these are the things that I would probably be wanting to look at. Excuse me. That you have some sort of process in place to identify those residents that need to be on enhanced barrier precautions, that you have clear signage. I'm going to talk about this a little bit. And also the next bullet, the supplies are available outside the resident room. These two bullets, CMS has a little different perspective or mention on their memo. So it could be at the discretion of the facility to put something a little bit more, what is it? I have it written down. Oh, sorry. It's more, I don't reach you guys the words. Okay, I'm getting there. Anyway, it's, you know, that you don't have to have a sign. You can post people are putting blue stickers. So it's just that you have some sort of notification that your staff know that it's on, that resident's on EBP. And the supplies too. So these are CDC's recommendations, but supplies also are addressed in the CMS memo that you could put, you know, gowns closer to where that task might be, that you're not always going to be doing that high contact activity when you cross that threshold into the patient's room. And yeah, there's probably going to be a cost incurred on increasing PPE. You know, we hear that. And I just, you know, would say that the cost of preventing one colonization or infection into a resident could be between $30,000 and like $75,000. So I guess it's a way to sell it to the administrator as to the why. I see.
Kelly, this is Marcy. I don't know if you see that question. Can supplies be kept inside the room in an enclosed area by their precautions?
Yeah, so I do have a Q&A on that one. Some people are looking into, because you don't want to have all these carts outside the rooms. I queried our Hawaii group yesterday, and it's about 10 to 20% of the residents seem to be meeting that definition of needing enhanced barrier precautions. So that's a lot of carts. Some people are using the over-the-door PPE organizer, or I saw on the APIC listserv, there's a gown dispenser, and I have a picture of that in the slide. And then, yeah, I see the comment about having supplies or cart outside the room can be a hazard. So, right, not big enough, and, you know, you got to have everything on one side and fall risks. So I thought actually the gown dispenser was a good idea. Go ahead, next slide. You guys don't need to reinvent the wheel. CDC has stuff. Mountain Pacific has stuff. Here's Pocket Guide on the left, Badge Buddy on the right. Go ahead, next slide. And I think the best resource that I've been able to find is that frequently asked questions from the CDC's website. So most of the questions that I feel I get, I can just go to that resource. So I would recommend printing that out. And that's what I use for the basis of this presentation too. But there are videos, implementation tools, letters to families and staff and leadership and observation tools. So no need to reinvent the wheel. Next slide. And then anytime you're implementing a new process, you always want to audit it. And I like the Institute for Healthcare Improvement model. You don't need a whole lot of observations to figure out if your process is in place and working. And so maybe do 5 to 10 observations a week while you're implementing them, just to make sure that folks understand. Next slide. So these are real questions that we get. It's like we're, you know, adding on to the CDC FAQ. And so I just guide you to where I would find these answers. So this question is about laundry, but the answer is about trash. Does laundry have to be handled in a special manner? And the answer is no. And so I refer to the number 29 in the FAQ. It's more around trash. I would, you know, highlight the OSHA bloodborne pathogen standards. So just making sure that folks understand if it's bloody or it's got, stuff on it, you're going to use your bloodborne pathogen policy and process. And most of the stuff that you guys are doing in the room is not producing any secretion. So regular trash, regular laundry is fine. Next slide. Here is a poll question. The resident's C. diff has resolved and will be coming off contact precautions. The resident has a Foley catheter. Do I need to place the resident in enhanced barrier precautions after contact precautions are discontinued? I don't know if you have a poll that's coming up, or we'll have them put it in chat. Poll question. So the answer, yes, no, or you're unsure. Love it. Yeah, so you might have scenarios that people are coming off contact and got to go right into enhanced barrier precautions. So another training kind of scenario you can give with your staff. We can end the poll. Thank you. And then next slide. A lot of wound questions we're getting. A lot of scenarios too. So if the wound is without secretions and uncovered, do I need to implement EBP? So you can do one click. And this FAQ number 23, I think provides some guidance in that you're going to need to define your chronic wounds. They define it here as pressure ulcers, diabetic foot injuries, unhealed surgical wounds, and chronic venous stasis ulcers. So the difference between chronic wounds and these shorter lasting wounds. So this question, if the wound is without secretions uncovered, leads me to believe maybe it's a shorter lasting wound, but it's just another point to make is you need to define what your chronic wounds are. And that's what EBP is meant to be adhered to as chronic wounds. Next slide. We got a lot of questions on physical therapy and what do they need to do. And so I feel like in the FAQ number 25, 26 answer these questions around the physical therapist or anybody walking the resident in the hall. And so I want to just remind folks, bundle care when you're taking care of folks. So you're not just going in to comb the hair. You're going in to comb the hair when you're doing bathing or you're doing something else with the resident, just so staff don't necessarily feel like they're always donning gown and gloves. But it's EBP again is meant to be close physical contact. So if the staff's clothes are going to touch the resident's clothes or linens, think EBP. So close physical contact, and it's meant for transfers and anytime they're going to be transferring or working with the resident in the therapy gym and the resident's room. When they're anticipating close physical contact, high contact activities. So the scenario we get is the PT is walking the resident in the hall, and they may be touching the gait belt. That's not a high contact activity. And that's my interpretation. So just to kind of highlight some of those words as you think through some scenarios that I'm sure your staff's getting or that you want to put out there for staff training. I know there have been, thanks Pam for that chronic wound definition. There have been some questions about defining chronic wounds. And so there's a few different dates. So I don't know if that's something you would want to use, but there is to get a little bit more technical about definition of chronic wound. Next slide. This CMS table created way more confusion. I'm just going to focus on the third one down. This business of using EBP at the discretion of the facility. This refers to targeted MDROs and epidemiologic important MDROs. And so CMS doesn't have that referenced. They just use the words in their documents. And then you got to go to the CDC document to see what the heck they mean. So I put on the right side the examples of the MDROs targeted by CDC. And so these are things you probably want to put in your policy, and maybe folks that are real confident, did you put things like this in your policy? And then it's really these additional epidemiologic important MDROs that you need to figure out what is important for your state. This is when you need to find out from your state health department what epidemiologic important MDROs should you be concerned about. This is not a limited list, so there could be more. Also reminding folks there's that 2019 antibiotic resistant threats. So that has a whole bunch of other bacteria and things to be thinking about. So you marry that up with what's going on in your state. Because, maybe for VRE, I pick on that one. If that's not an issue in your state or in a nursing home, then maybe at the discretion of the facility, you're not going to implement EBP. But MRSA and ESBL, I know, are very common organisms you see in nursing homes. So you probably would want to implement EBP for those scenarios. So that's hopefully explaining that line item a little bit more. And I just want to say the top one, anytime that there's a wound that can't be contained and has secretions, you're going to want to put them in contact precautions, because those are the ones that are really contaminating the environment. Next slide. How are you letting staff know? So going to be super important. You have it in your policy and training, and grab some ideas off of APIC and then refer to the Holly McCool list, because I felt like it was pretty comprehensive. I've seen folks say magnets that have EBP with the room number. They have a blue hand sign. They've got the blue dot. And then some are using the EBP sign from CDC. And then Holly McCool's list, we heard from Denise a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now. You've got the sign. You've got your electronic medical record with a banner or an alert. You've got the IP doing weekly rounds. You've got your 24-hour like shift change or daily report to just, again, look at that list. And then the IP is involved in notifying staff for any new admits. And I see this repeated in some other facilities too. So I don't know, those that are feel pretty good about how you're letting staff know, if you could maybe put in some ideas into the chat. If there's something outside of this, this is where, okay, I'm just gonna read the CMS because I have it highlighted and it's bugging me. So you have the discretion to communicate to staff. So CMS supports facilities in using creative, that's the word, creative or subtle ways to alert staff when EBP use is necessary to help maintain a home-like environment. So that's where the magnets and other ideas come into play. Next slide. Next two slides are around using the device. So remember, anytime you're using the device, you got to be putting on EBP. So if you're giving medication to the feeding tube or PICC lines are included in central vascular lines, not peripheral lines, but PICC lines. Do I need to wear a gown? And the answer is yes. So we've been getting questions more around giving meds through feeding tubes or a PICC line. And so how I interpret it is you're using the device. You may be staff clothes touching the resident clothes or linens in these scenarios. So yeah, I would be putting on EBP. Next slide. There might be a poll that might work, but it has kind of the answer. So we don't have to do the poll because the answer is already there. And I know that somebody just shared with us that they got cited for this scenario, emptying the Foley catheter without wearing a gown. So again, just highlighting in the FAQs, number 22 addresses that indwelling medical device definition, and Foley catheters, indwelling urinary catheters are included. And I just, there's been a lot of questions about ostomies, and these would not be indwelling medical devices because they're not this direct pathway for pathogens. They're not, it's not like a tube is going in or coming out of the resident. Next slide. These are the gown dispensers. And here's the CMS memo around that you have the discretion for placement of supplies. And so could be in or near the outside of the resident's room. And, the idea is that you're not always performing high contact activities when you're in the resident room, but you might be in there and then you find yourself performing one. So then you can just grab a gown. People are placing these next to the glove boxes. So it's just an example. There's probably more. I just pulled these off of that one website. Next slide. I think that might be it. Yeah. Wow, good. 5 minutes for questions. Hopefully that helped it a little bit. Anybody want to come off mute or put in chat? I mean, 58% feel pretty confident. So how's it working? What's the challenges that you're still finding that maybe we can learn from?
This is Pamela in Ketchikan, and I'd like to just kind of mention some of the feedback that we've had from the residents. Some of them cry. They feel like they're being ostracized. The other thing that we've heard from the residents is there's a delay in time for residents or for staff to get to them. So the residents are really not happy and they don't understand why. And, you know, Matt was here just a week ago and I shared some of the feedback with him from our residents. And he said, you need to be sure that you're passing that back to AHA to let them know that the residents are very unhappy and that that it makes them feel bad. Like they feel like they're, you know, contagious or being ostracized and they want to know, well, what's wrong with me? Why do you have to wear that gown? And so it's just a very challenging concept when there's, you know, when there's flu or influenza or something else that we put them in isolation for. That's easier for them to comprehend and understand than EBP. So resident satisfaction with this whole rollout has not been positive for us.
Have you used the letters that are on the CDC website as a resource? They have letters to the residents. Wondering if that was helpful, or this is where we rely on folks that are very confident to chime in. And how did you guys get past that resident barrier or, you know, concern about feeling like they've got, you know, some contagious disease?
And I would just add that the more cognitively intact they are, the harder it is for them. A lot of our residents are, you know, they have dementia or they're at a stage that they really don't know any different, really. But the ones that are cognitively intact are the ones that are most upset about it.
It's a little bit of a change for them, just not. And is it because it's their home? Is it that they're
It
saying
is their home,
I
yeah.
wouldn't
And
be
they're
doing
like, so we don't
this?
have to wear
Yeah.
armbands, yet you have to wear a gown to come in here to, you know, be able to change my linens or to boost me in bed or to float my heels.
So departments of health were given an email address for CMS and just for the health department. So please feed this feedback to your health department folks that can maybe then send some feedback to CMS. I was happy to see that that option was there. So I will take that back. And then I'm just gonna look at chat here. How do nursing home complies with EBP while maintaining a home-like environment? Yeah. And that I think that's the challenge. As an ombudsman, I think this is horrible, not a home-like environment. I'll be talking about this with National State Ombudsman Association to see what, if any, can be done. So I was glad to hear that there was maybe still like some open discussion about it, that CMS was still open to hear, you know, questions and concerns. And the hospital side of the facility is not following these precautions, right? It is causing confusion to residents when they have gone back and forth to the ER or admitted to the hospital. Yeah, okay, thank you for these comments. We don't really have an answer, but it's good feedback. And I think, you know, it's just a lot of education right now and finding that best resource to be able to help staff, help residents. Thank you, you guys. Hand it back over to you, Callie.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you guys for all of your wonderful feedback and questions. Thank you, Kelly, for presenting today. And we just want to remind everyone to take a minute to fill out the evaluation that we're going to drop in the chat. We appreciate your feedback and your participation in our calls, and just make sure you guys join us next week for another episode of It's Worth a Shot. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.